Thanks for tuning in live on Proline TV, the Ourlads Football Network, as we have already begun Week 17 in the NFL. Merry Christmas to everybody out there, as we have some interesting updates already on the playoff picture in the NFC. Of course, the AFC also. There are only 3 spots remaining now for the playoffs in the NFL. 2 spots remain in the AFC and 1 spot remains in the NFC. So what we're going to do here is pretty simple. We're going to go over the scenarios for both conferences. We're going to go over the number 1 seed scenarios. We're going to go over the wild card scenarios, home field, that sort of thing. And we'll also go through each game. Now, we'll be on the air tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern on the Playbook ATS podcast. Host Mark Lawrence. I'll be there. Andy Isco will be there. And not sure if Jim's going to be there, but hopefully he'll be able to make it. He's got his family in town. So, hey, it's Christmas. It's the holidays. You get it. We'll see what happens. But we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow, both the NFL and college football on the Playbook ATS podcast. That's Friday. That's tomorrow at 3 Eastern. So let's get right to it and talk about the playoff scenarios as we go through the games as well. And let's kind of do that. Let us go through each game. Let me pop up the games. We're going to start, of course, in order of the schedule. And this is what Saturday's schedule looks like in the AFC. You got Houston and the Chargers in a really big matchup. So this is as big as a matchup as there is this week, even though you have the Chargers already in the postseason, but Houston is not. Again, there's 2 spots remaining. And regarding those 2 spots in the AFC, one of them will be taken away from the AFC North, and the most likely scenario being the Pittsburgh Steelers. So statistically speaking, it's Pittsburgh's, and that's probably what we're going to see, or most likely. Moving on, we have the remaining spot. So let's say Pittsburgh wins the AFC North. That leaves 1 more spot, and this is where Houston comes in. Now, all Houston needs to do is win one of their last 2 games. So if they win one of their last 2, they are the final team in the playoffs. They're in the wild card, along with Pittsburgh, more than likely in the North. Okay. The other team that has a shot, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts, well, if you not just the Colts, but let's look at it this way. For Houston, let's talk about the game first, okay? And what Houston has to do here. If they win this game, that's it. They're in the playoffs. Pittsburgh wins the North most likely. You've got the 7 teams from the AFC, and there you go. It's that simple. But if Houston does not win this game, then they could look at the game between Indianapolis and Jacksonville, and if the Colts wind up losing, which most people would bet that they would, then Houston is also in the playoffs. So it's that simple for Houston. Try to take care of business on Saturday against the Chargers. If not, you watch TV on Sunday. If Jacksonville beats the Indianapolis Colts, that's it. And Houston is in the playoffs. So going through this game, again, the Chargers are already in the playoffs. They're a 1.5-point favorite in this game now. And I guess you can call this, I guess we won't know if we'll call it Justin Herbert's revenge until Saturday night, depending on the result of the game. But Herbert, look, I don't really think this is about Herbert back at Houston. I think it's really Herbert trying to just get back at what happened to him in the playoffs last year. And really, if you look at it, in the last several years that he's been a quarterback, he's had one really just bad game, disastrous game. And that was the wild card game against Houston last year. They got blown out as a 2-point road favorite. Most fans, of course, remember that. Charger fans obviously do. And so that's what Justin Herbert's dealing with now. He still has the broken hand on the left side, which is the reason why he's still able to go out there and sling it. And he looked awfully good in the game against the weak Dallas Cowboys defense last Sunday. Big difference with the Houston Texans defense coming up this Saturday night. And you have to look at it too, or I know a lot of people will look at it like this and say, okay, well, the Chargers are in the playoffs and Houston needs the win to be in the playoffs. Therefore, Houston needs the game more. I'm taking Houston. You just can't wager that way. Now, I'm not saying that in certain circumstances you could, like let's say it doesn't really matter what happens to the Chargers if they win this game. That's completely different. But then again, it would be reflective of the odds. And if the Chargers were in a situation where this game meant nothing to them, Houston would be the favorite in this game. I don't think there'd be any question about that. But because the Chargers need this game, and this is a big reason, and this is basically the main storyline of this video, even though, take a look, actually, let me pop up. Let me get the seven seeds lined up here so you can see exactly the difference in what we're talking about. Okay, so here are the Chargers as the 5 seed. Here are the Texans as the 7 seed. And as I said, you got the 2 in the hunt, Pittsburgh and Houston. All right. So here's the deal with the Chargers. They sit there as the 5 seed. All right. And it's looking like Pittsburgh is going to win the North, and therefore they're going to get the 4 seed. All right. So that puts the Chargers, you see there, right there, they're tied with the Bills with the same record, and Houston is just a game back. Now, I haven't looked at this part, but let's just say the Chargers lose to Houston. They have the same record. And let's say Buffalo beats Philly. And now the Chargers are the 6th seed matched up with Houston. Well, Houston beat them 1-on-1. And I'm just looking here. And that would mean since it's just those 2 teams 1-on-1 and Houston beat the Chargers, that would put the Chargers as the 7th seed. All right. So you're looking at a situation where it's possible, maybe even probable, because the Bills are a favorite, even though they're only a 1-point favorite. It's still based on mathematics, which I don't really like getting into. That's another thing. It is so annoying to me that when I take a look at playoff scenarios, which I did a lot of these last couple of weeks, the same thing in college football, going for all the tiebreakers at the end of the season with the conference races, everything. And when you pop up and you type in certain words and what you're expecting to see in these scenario and these tiebreakers, which are just the way it used to be, maybe even last year. I think this is the first time this year in my life that I remember when I'm looking for playoff scenarios or college football tiebreaker scenarios, that the first thing, the second thing, and the third thing that's going to pop up on the screen are percentages. In other words, so-and-so, like here it is, here, these percentages right here. Okay. These percentages are like in your face instead of, can you just write on like a 1-sentence line what the team needs to do in order to be in the playoffs, to get the bye? Can you just write that out? I'll read it and I'll understand it. But no, what we have to do now today is we just have to give you percentages. And apparently that's supposed to be good enough for us. And what they're saying is, okay, the way it is today, everybody's on the move and you want to just, you hear everything is about shorter videos, condensed words, condensed stories, paragraphs into sentences, into words, hyphenated. And that's why they're putting these percentages up. They're like, hey, let's just put the percentages up. And then they'll just, 95%. Okay, I guess I'm in. 50%. Okay, I guess I got it could go either way. Instead of teaching us a little bit of information and letting us get smarter that way. This is how basically they've dumbed down everything in society, which I'm not going to get into, but this is how they've dumbed down sports. They're just going to throw percentages at you, and that's it. So it was very difficult. It made it a lot harder for me to find the information. Instead of normally I type it in, boom, it's right there. And I'm able to even come on the show and say, here, I'm just going to show you what I found out. But I can't do that now because nobody does it that way. So instead, I'll tell you. And so here you get the situation now that I went over, where if the Chargers lose to the Texans, they could be the 7th seed. And then in that position, more than likely, they do not control their destiny now. They're sitting there as a 7 seed, no home games, on the road immediately. That means they would play whoever would be the 2 seed. And let's see if that's already, it could be the Patriots. Maybe that's probably what it would be. And you'd have the Chargers, knowing that the California Chargers team would have to travel all the way to the East Coast and play in a potentially really cold environment in Foxborough, Massachusetts. All right. That's what's on the line for the Chargers. Now, what's most importantly on the line, too, is if the Chargers win the game. This is the thing that's really ironic. If they win the game, they control. Well, really, I shouldn't even say if they will. The Chargers control their own destiny to not only win the AFC West, but win the division. I should say, if you look at it, they would control their own destiny to win the division. Excuse me, to win the division, but they would be put into a really good position to win, to get the overall number 1 seed. Okay, so that they don't control their own destiny in that department, but they do control their own destiny to win the AFC West. All right, so that's what the schedule that they've played, and they've played a really tough schedule over the past several weeks. They were even a dog last week at Dallas. Don't forget that. And now they're playing a red-hot Houston team that has won 7 straight. So this is both Houston and the Chargers have played really tough schedules lately. Houston's played a tough schedule all season. And that's why I think Houston is a very dangerous playoff team. And the Chargers are as well, because if the Chargers can keep this momentum going, which is, again, why it's a very important game for the Chargers. They keep this momentum going, then there's a possibility that they could be the number 1 seed and get a bye. It's possible. But the main thing that they are looking at is, we don't want to be the 7th seed. We don't want to have to go to Foxborough in the last. We don't want to go all the way across the East Coast and play in that game. No, we want to win this game. We want to play Denver next week in Denver. We want to sweep Denver. We want to win the AFC West, and then see where we land as far as the standings are concerned, whether they're a 2 seed or a 3 seed. All right, so that's why, even though Houston still needs to get into the playoffs, the Chargers are not looking at this game as, it's not that important, or as important for Houston. And look, it would really be hard for Houston not to make it. Again, take a look here as far as who's in the hunt and on the bubble. So you got the Ravens, who are just falling apart with 7 wins. They can only get to 9. And then you got the Colts with 8 wins. And that's the only team that can catch Houston. That's it. So now look, Houston will be looking at this game like, if we lose the game and the Colts upset Jacksonville, we've got to play the Colts next week to decide who goes to the playoffs. So the Colts are now in a position sort of like the Chargers and another team I'll get to in a little bit, that even though things aren't going very well for them, matter of fact, if you look at the Colts, if they win and the Chargers beat Houston, okay, Indy can clinch the wild card with the win against Houston next week. Now, the only way that could not happen would be if Kansas City were to upset Denver tonight. That's it. That's the only way. And that is unlikely. So just not, and it doesn't even mean that would be a definite 100% deal. but it just was a thing where you got to get into the computers and there's a lot of stuff there and it's very confusing. So let's just say Denver beats Kansas City for just this conversation's sake. Then it's as simple as that. You beat Jacksonville on Sunday. Houston loses to the Chargers. You play Houston next week, beat Houston, Colts 7 seed, Houston out. Okay. But do we really think all of that's going to happen? So again, as much as this is an important game for Houston and more important for Houston, it's a real important game for the Chargers. And so don't think that they're just going to take it lightly. The Chargers, if you look at them, even though Houston's on a 7-game win streak, the Texans on that 7-game win streak, the Chargers are on a 4-game win streak in their last 4, both straight up ATS, and their last 3 wins have been as dogs. Both of these teams have made nice runs against really good teams, upsetting teams, and that's why this is a good game. Last week, maybe a very predictable downfall after the game, and you looked at it, you know, if everything was as easy as predictable, we would be rich as handicappers. But when the game ended and you looked at the way that Houston kind of struggled, you have to keep in mind they had injuries. Again, it's such a tough schedule they were playing. It was the typical kind of sandwich type of a game. There's no way we're going to lose this game to this crappy team. And you know the worst thing that can happen in a way to a team that that's supposed to win a game. Let's say a team that is heavily favored to win a game, and they're playing their opponent, and they get an easy score in the beginning of the game. Like in the first couple of minutes, they get an easy score, a kick return for a touchdown, a pick six for a touchdown like the Texans had last week. Sometimes, and I've seen this happen many times over the years in that scenario, that backfires. Because what happens is you've kind of knew all week that you were clearly the better team, that you just have to play an average game and you're going to beat this team. They're just bad and all of that. And then, you know, you're hearing, from the coaches and you're even saying it yourself. Nah, every team can beat you and we got to concentrate and all that. We got to respect the team. And then what happens is right away, boom, you get a quick touchdown and all of that, the flood of confidence comes back in, or the confidence you should have in the fact that, see, this is going to be an easy game. Then all of a sudden you kind of drop down. You kind of let the aggression, the wall that you had built to try to fake yourself into believing that this was going to be a tough game, it's gone. And that's the worst thing that could happen. Everybody knows that in sports, the worst thing you can do is drop your guard in any situation during the course of the game to kind of just relax. And you see that a lot. Like, for instance, the Pittsburgh-Detroit game last week. That game is nothing. Nobody's doing anything on offense. And then Pittsburgh scores to go up. They went up 2 scores, I believe. And as soon as they went up 2 scores, the Lions all of a sudden, play, touchdown. Took them 3 minutes to score a touchdown. Pittsburgh comes back, scores another touchdown. What does Detroit do? Bang, 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 touchdown. Another 2 or 3 minutes, touchdown. And it's like you're saying, wait a second. You guys had struggled all game offensively. You couldn't do anything. And then as soon as Pittsburgh went up 2 scores, boom. And why do you think that was? There's 2 reasons, I think. One, you get the opposing team relaxes a little bit. We've got the 2-score lead now, okay? Because not every play can beat us. Now we've got a little bit of wiggle room, and then it disappears. And then as soon as you got it again, it disappears again. But that happens so much. And for Detroit's sake, for that side, when it comes up with that big play or the offense all of a sudden gets going, it does also reflect on them as well, that side, because they do then get into more of a panic mode, of a mode of, uh-oh, we're down 2 scores now. Before it was like, oh, we're still within this game. Any play now, we could take the lead. It is what it is. And then all of a sudden you go down 2 scores. And it's like, wait a second, we got to get going here. And then boom. So it's a combination of both. But I think it's always interesting when that happens because I've seen it many times. All right. So where are we? Here we go. All right. A couple more tidbits. And that is the fact that, again, injuries for Houston. So Woody Marks, see if he plays again. Offensive line, they've got injuries. Ursery and Trent Brown. Keep an eye on their linebacker. Al Shahir, he's also banged up. Let me see if I can pop up the injury report so I can have that handy because I was looking over this yesterday. And now we're into, it is still Christmas though. So I don't really know if we're going to get any difference in injury status. But I'll take a look here. Let me throw this over here. Okay. So let's see. Where are we? Look at all these injuries, man. All right. So for Houston, there's still Ursery. Trent Brown out for sure. Okay. So Ursery, though, who's had a really good season as a rookie. And remember, if you were with us when we previewed the season for Houston and during the draft process, we talked about Ursery being a really good player. Matter of fact, he was my favorite offensive lineman in the entire draft. That included Will Campbell, included Membu. But as a Jet fan, I can tell you right now that I'm glad that I was wrong there. But Ursery, I think the value, though, was the best out of all the linemen, no doubt. So while Membu was a better lineman, Campbell, not sure yet, but Membu definitely. But value-wise, Ursery, value play. And that was much needed for Houston. And that was something else we chronicled. It was their Achilles heel as a front office. They were just completely whiffing on offensive line talent. And so maybe they found Ursery at the right time, maybe at the last possible time, because sooner or later, you might lose your job if you can't protect your quarterback. It hasn't happened in Cincinnati yet, but Cincinnati's another story. Okay, so there you go. And then with the Chargers, injury-wise, I don't see anything, or I didn't notice anything that really stuck out to me regarding, the usuals. I mean, what a surprise. Another offensive lineman gets hurt. So Salyer, a veteran, comes in, and he's hurt. So we'll see if Becton can play. That would be big. Vidal's also banged up a little bit. There you got Alt. And, of course, Slater from earlier in the season. Okay, so a huge game. Chargers in Houston at 4:30 on Saturday. Now, let's turn our attention to the game following that on Saturday night, Baltimore and Green Bay. The Packers have now gone up to a 4-point favorite. Let me check the latest injury news because that's you got the two teams dealing with quarterback injuries. And there you go. Lamar Jackson now looks like he is not going to play for the Ravens. And taking a look at the Packers, Jordan Love, what do we got there? Still questionable. So is Malik Willis. Who is the Packers' third string quarterback? Boy, that's something that I don't even remember who they have as the third string quarterback. Let's see here. Come on. What are we doing here? Why do we have this here? Oh, you see, they're going to screw this up with me because I'm not on the. I think it's because I'm not on the ads. I have to take this off the monitor. I'm not getting anywhere on the monitor. Okay, here's the depth chart, and here's the quarterback. Let me slide it in now. Ourlads depth charts, the best in the business. Don't forget, this is a production also simulcasted on the Ourlads football YouTube channel. And there you go. We have to take a look at the practice squad, and that would be Clayton Tune. Wow. Now, I know Clayton Tune got a start or two in Houston, I think as a rookie. I think he was an older rookie too, but Tune had a lot of talent. He's got pretty good size. And how old is he? Just still only 26 years old. Our lads projected him as a 5th or 6th round quarterback. And again, I mean, a player at least that does have experience. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to see Jordan Love playing because I don't get a feeling because I don't really see or read about a lot of panic in Green Bay right now because it doesn't even look like Willis is going to play. And therefore, you would think there would be. And plus the line's indicating that at 4.5. Vegas knows what they're doing. If they felt in any way, shape, or form that Clayton Tune is going to be the quarterback on Saturday night, that line would not have moved up to 4.5, even though Lamar Jackson is not going to play, it looks like. And that's going to do it for the Baltimore Ravens. It's just they're toast. They're 1-6 straight up and against the spread versus winning teams this year. There's a lot of talk that Harbaugh, maybe this is it. I don't know if that's the case. I look forward to talking more about the Ravens and finding out all about that with Tony Lombardi, our Ravens insider from the Russell Street Report. Of course, Baltimore's at Pittsburgh next week. And the Ravens, taking a look at what their chances are, which aren't very good. And with Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh is going to be going to Cleveland to take on the Browns. And let's see. Pittsburgh, this is one thing you got to keep in mind. So if Baltimore loses the game, okay, then Pittsburgh wins the North. And it's so likely that they're going to stay with the 4 seed. Pittsburgh's not going anywhere. So the game is really going to be for nothing. And that's really important. So what I would say is, matter of fact, I think if this line moved up to 4.5, I'm going to guess that the Pittsburgh-Cleveland line now has moved towards Cleveland. I don't know if that's happened, but I would guess that would be the case. Let me just take a sneak peek and see if that happened. It did not. So this is what I would do. Because I believe Jordan Love is going to play, and this is important, or even Willis. I think even if Willis plays, I think he's better than Huntley, and the Packers are a better team anyway. So I think the Packers are going to beat the Ravens. So if I think the Packers are going to beat the Ravens, that means the Steelers are going to clinch the North. That means, as I said, Pittsburgh's not going to go anywhere. Let's just take a look at just so you can see the scenario, the way it looks. So Pittsburgh sits there at 9 wins. That's it. All right. The teams that they would have to chase for a better spot, 11. All right, that's it. The Jags. The Jags are the only team that they could catch for the 3 seed, and they're not catching Jacksonville. And I don't even know if they caught Jacksonville that they can. There might even be some statistical elements in it that say, or tiebreakers in there that say, I know it's not 100%, but it's like 95 or 98% that the Steelers, if they win the North, will be the 4 seed. And that's all that's all we can go on as handicappers. So therefore, if I'm betting that Packers will beat the Ravens, that's of course the biggest if, but if I bet the Packers to beat the Ravens, then that means that the Steelers why would they play Aaron Rodgers? Just play Mason Rudolph. Just get Caleb Johnson in there for Warren. I mean, DK Metcalf suspended 2 games. Who cares? We were going to sit him anyway. So that's what I would do. And that puts, now look, Mason Rudolph is not a bad backup, but it wouldn't be just Rudolph. Metcalf's not going to play, like I said. Why would you play Warren? No way am I playing TJ Watt. And I'm not playing Herbig either. And we know the Browns have been tough at home. So yeah, I mean, I would I would maybe a really good parlay if they'll give it to you. Sometimes at the end of the season, when you have these little situations where, hey, if one team does this, it impacts the other team, then sometimes they won't give you a parlay. I mean, I don't know. Of course, I'm not wagering in Las Vegas, but I know at certain sports books I've tried to go that route. Nope, they won't let me. But if they allowed me to do this, I would go Packers and Browns because I think you're going to get, because I think what's going to happen is if the Packers beat the Ravens, then as soon as it happens, and it might even, the word might start trickling out in the next day or two about more about this. But if the game is over, Green Bay wins, and now you've got 24 hours to go before the game for Pittsburgh and Cleveland, I think that's going to be long enough that the word will get out there, and boom, you look up, no Aaron Rodgers, no Watt, whatever, and that line is going to change. Now, I don't think it's going to change dramatically. Like I said, you still have Mason Rudolph. There's still going to be a certain amount of starters out there because not everybody can rest. And I don't think Pittsburgh would do that anyway. So there you go. That's just that's the way I would handle it. And that's all this video and videos have been about all season for me. As I have said all season, I am not a professional handicapper. I leave that up to Jim Feist and Mark Lawrence. Those guys are awesome at what they do. And because of that, listen to what they have to say. And hopefully they'll both be on with me tomorrow. And this is definitely something that we'll talk about for sure. So we'll see what and I'll bring it up if they don't and see what they say. Okay. Anything else in this game? Packers. All right. So Green Bay is now a playoff team. Why? Because the Detroit Lions lost to the Minnesota Vikings with Max Brosmer. And Max Brosmer, I think, threw for 51 yards or something like that. You know, it's interesting in sports, and especially in football because there's only so many games. It's interesting when you look at the end of the season, especially. And I've been doing this, and not as a handicapper, as a fan. I've been watching end of the seasons in the NFL or grasping what's going on at least for 40 years. And so I've come to see these patterns. And that's why I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were going over and I mentioned this with the Cowboys, which is why I loved the Chargers over the Cowboys, because I said, I just felt that the Cowboys were pretty much done, you know, and then lo and behold, before they even played the game, they were eliminated. But I kind of felt that they kind of knew that when they lost to the Lions, it was almost like it's over. You know, we made our run, sort of like the Bengals. There's no way that the Bengals, if they played the Ravens after beating the Bills, let's say they hold on and beat the Bills, there's no way the Ravens shut down the Bengals in that game. Matter of fact, the Bengals are going to win that game. But that's what happens. You lose, even though they were still mathematically in it, they knew it was over. And that's why you heard Joe Burrow talk all week. And when you heard Joe Burrow talk all week like that, you had to have a feeling that you could see what happened, and it did. And then the same thing with the Cowboys and the same thing with the Lions. As soon as the Lions lost back-to-back for the first time under Dan Campbell since I think it was his first season, or it might have been his second season. Because I remember he started off 0-6 or something like that in his first season and started 1-6 in his second season. And then boom, everything turned around. So it hadn't happened since that time that they lost back-to-back games. They were still in it, though. There was still a chance for Detroit. They could still do this, but there was no life in them. Everything basically just caught up to them. The injuries, not having their coordinators all season, that change. Look, that helps in the beginning of the season, or it doesn't become a factor in the beginning of the season. because they're still, hey, we can do this. It's not all about them. It's us. We still have our head coach. We still have our players, that sort of thing. Then the injuries occur. And then it's, oh, here we go again. And then later in the season, as the season goes on, you start, matter of fact, remember that it looked like they were going to get Frank Ragnow back. And for a couple of days, there was excitement again. Like, hey, we've been hanging in there. We could still get to the postseason, but now we can, if Ragnow comes back, hey, maybe we could do this. Maybe we could do this. No, a couple of days later, he couldn't pass the physical. And then that's a letdown. And then they lose a couple back-to-back. They lose the first back-to-back in 3 years. It wasn't like J.J. McCarthy was playing or Carson Wentz was playing, and then that quarterback happened to throw for 300 yards. No, they lost with a quarterback doing basically nothing because they had nothing. What's going on back there? It's my cat. Daisy, what are you doing? She's trying to open the window. She doesn't like it when I close the artificial drapes. Daisy, do you need me to open that for you? Here, come on. There you go. She's probably going to run away after this. I bet you she just leaves anyway. That's a kitten for you. Okay. So that's the gist of it anyway. That the Lions, it didn't matter what was going on. Unless the Vikings just had 5 turnovers and just threw the game at the Lions, you can kind of tell that this could happen. It was over. And they knew it. And that's the kind of effort that they had out there. And it's not that they didn't try, or it's not that, it's just the confidence was gone. The it factor gone. They're probably going to have to go out and get a new offensive coordinator. I think that's 100% going to happen. They like the defensive coordinator, so I don't think that'll change. I don't blame him anyway. See, there she goes. Because of the fact that there was so many injuries on that team, on defense especially. But that opens it up for the Packers. So now the Packers, who are a playoff team, are looking at the division. Okay, so another situation where you have one team in Baltimore that still has to play hard to win and to get to the postseason, and the Packers are in it. Packers, though, like the Chargers, still have something to play for. They can, not as likely as the Chargers scenario, though, because they'd have to win these 2, and the Bears would have to lose 2. Now, the Bears are playing the Niners. They're a dog on the road, and maybe they lose. That's probable. That's what the line says. And then the following week, they're at Minnesota. They're at, is it Detroit? Who are they at? Who's the Bears playing the week after that? Detroit. They're hosting Detroit the week after that. And if Detroit knows that they can knock Chicago out, maybe that gives them a little bit of something to play for. I doubt it. So, look, there's a chance, but a very unlikely chance. The Packers are not going to win this division. The Bears are going to. It's just the way I think it'll be. And look, I think the Packers are going to win. I actually think the Bears are going to win, but let's just say they lose. Now, all of a sudden, you go to the next week, and then that's what's on the line. The Packers need to beat Minnesota on the road. More than likely, they'll do that, especially if Brosmer comes back out there. And then it's up to Chicago. And they're hosting Detroit. And does Detroit have anything left in the tank in order to go out there and knock Chicago away from a division title? And maybe much more. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. So there you go. Jacobs, of course, is also dealing with an injury. So you got to keep that in mind. Let me see here. So here are the Bears in the 2nd seed. And then you got the Packers there as the 7th seed. And then there are the Panthers, who right now are just like the Steelers in the hunt, looking good, just like the Steelers. But the Steelers are in much better shape than the Panthers. Panthers still have work to do on the bubble here. You have the Bucks, and that's it. So that's the thing. If you look at it here, there's only 3 teams. That's it. 3 teams that are on the outside looking in for both conferences with a shot. How crazy is that? Let's see. Okay. So isn't that interesting? But that's just the divisions. You got the Vikings already out, the Lions already out, the Cowboys already out, and yet the Bucks, who are the 11th seed, they're still in it. All right. So let's get back to, again, Jacobs is banged up. And that was another thing that really hurt the Packers' chances last week. Love goes down. Jacobs did not play in the fourth quarter or overtime. Zach Tom is still banged up. Look, I got to hand it to the Packers to go out there and play the way that they did against Green Bay. I'm going to feel the same way on Saturday night if they go out there and play hard and win the game like I expect them to, because it's really tough. I mean, you lose Tucker Kraft, and that's a major blow on offense, no question. But the Parsons injury is monumental. And I think the good thing is it happened so late in the season that there's no time to feel sorry for yourself. You know, you just, and so I think if this happened like week 5, week 4, it's such a long season that you're going to get into the whole, I mean, are we going to win a Super Bowl without Micah Parsons? I mean, is that going to happen? You know how rare, if at all, it's ever happened that a team loses their superstar player and doesn't win a Super Bowl? I mean, I'd really like to know. I'd really have to do research on that to find out if that has ever happened. Of course, you have to still have others. Now, does that team also have other superstars around them? Especially years ago when you had the opportunity to have more superstars around you when there was, not a salary cap or a looser cap situation. So I'd have to take a look at that, but it is extremely rare. But late in the season, I think that'll benefit the Packers. That's why I think you saw a really good effort the other day. I expect a really good effort on Saturday night. Packers are 5-0-1 against the spread in their last 6 as home favorites in single digits. All right. So they've been doing a good job in that department. Both of these teams have not covered the spread well this year. They're a combined 10-19-1. But as I said, I'm taking the Packers in this situation over Baltimore. And the other thing too, when I look at Baltimore, I'm looking at Baltimore the same way I would looked at Detroit, the Bengals, the Cowboys. I think they know they're done, especially with Lamar Jackson out. This is not week 5, week 6, week 7 when Jackson was out for a little bit and they bring in a backup. That's okay. We'll be okay. We still got a long season. Lamar will be back. No, this is it. This is it. It's over. We lose this game. We're out of it. Lamar's already hurt. We've had a bad season. You know what I thought was overblown too? In the beginning of the game last week, they put this stat on the screen about how the Ravens, I think it was their point differential defensively. They showed it like the first part of the season and then the second part of the season and how big a change it was. It was like, I don't know, in the 30s, and now it was in the teens. And I thought that was extremely misleading because if you looked at it going in, even though the Ravens had a much better run in the second half defensively, they still were giving up big games. They gave up 27 to the Steelers. They gave up 32 to the Bengals. And the teams that, and of course they went on to give up 28 against the Patriots, but the teams that they did well against, they shut out the Bengals, and we went over why that happened. They gave up 10 against the Jets, 16 against the Browns, 19 against the offensively challenged Vikings, 6 against the Dolphins. And so there you go. So it's like No, I'm sorry. You can make it look the way you want to make it look statistically speaking, but they need a new defensive coordinator. And I tell you what, if I don't think Harbaugh is going to make it myself, I think they are. It's time. Everybody moves on at some point. All right. And it's almost asking, it's almost asking too much for Harbaugh to be the lifer head coach of the Ravens. And that is so unusual. At some point, Super Bowl winning coaches just move on. They all do it. And it's time for Harbaugh to move on. But I was going to say is if he doesn't move on, I'm sorry, but you have to get a new defensive coordinator. Please don't tell me that you're looking at those stats and think that means, oh, we're getting better on defense. Yeah, right. You look good on the other night against the Patriots. Yeah. And those other games I just talked about. And that says it all right there. 1-6 straight up and against the spread in their 7 games this year against winning teams. And the defense also had a lot to do with that. Let's move on. And now we go to another big game, this one in the NFC between Seattle and Carolina. By the way, I'm going to pop up one of our viewers, Joseph Freda. Nice comment. I appreciate it. Joseph, I really have always found it interesting because I've been in the business. I was a radio broadcaster for the first 20 years of my career. And I always found it interesting, and it still happens, when I see members of the media in general, because our guys on this channel, I mean, they had nothing going on anyway. Jim did his show, moved it up. Mark will do his show on Friday. They're not taking off. But I look around nationally and I see, and that's really the comparison really, is when I take a look nationally and I see these broadcasters that decide during the holidays that they're taking off. It really blows my mind because it's like, look, you're in the media business. You're there, especially if you're a talent, an on-air talent. There are people that will follow you and listen to you and watch you because they like you and they want to hear what you have to say. And that's important. But so I don't understand why they feel that they're like entitled to take off during the holidays. Like, why? Why do you have to take off during the holidays? I mean, if you want to take off Christmas, if you want to do that, if you want to take off New Year's, you want to do that if it's in the middle of the week. But why do they take off the whole week? I bet you there are like 90%, 95% of the broadcasters out there, the ones that have their own shows, especially on radio or network TV, they are out for these 2 weeks. We're taking a 2-week vacation and they're gone. And it's like, well, why? You're a member of the media. It's your job. You don't have a job doing, like if there's a number of jobs you can have out there that would make more sense where you would take off because of the holidays and all that stuff. And I got to go see my family. But you have a responsibility when you're a broadcaster. You have a responsibility to be on the air, especially when they have, when they're off, especially nowadays where everything is available on streaming, on YouTube, podcasting, all that. They're going, okay, well, I have more time now. So I want to watch my favorite media channels and my favorite media personalities, but they're gone. Well, why are they gone? I mean, I have extra time now. I want to see what they have to say. I'm sorry, but I don't understand that. The only thing that I would be okay with and saying, all right, if that's what you do, that's okay, is if you're one of those shows where, you're on drive time in the morning or the evening and your numbers drastically change if there's a holiday because there's no drive time. All of those workers, people who, come and go from work and they're on listening to the radio. If that's your audience, then that's different. But statistically speaking, there's an awful lot of people today that still are off for the holidays, the entire week, the 2 weeks, and they don't need to be. I mean, like this, your job as a broadcaster is to get in front of people, especially more than anything when they have extra time, and especially when there's not when your competition wants to go ahead and take off, or when there's other things, because this thought of, well, if it's the holidays, then nobody cares about a show that you only care about the show when you're working. Is that what you're saying? That your viewers, your listeners only care about watching or listening to you because they have a job? That makes no sense to me. And that's why also I think it's selfish, completely selfish, especially when these highly successful media types, I take the 2 weeks off. Yeah, I got to take it the holidays. I mean, you have all that money and all that privilege because of the viewers, and you should be center stage as often as possible, especially around the holidays and when there's time off and people don't have a lot out there when it comes to watching and preoccupying themselves with. And I know, when you're in the holidays, there's a lot of family stuff and there's a lot of interruption. I get that. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to work the entire schedule. I'm just saying that people like to take up the whole week or 2 weeks, and I just never understood that. And I'm talking about only the media and broadcast company, obviously, industry. So anyway, I don't expect a whole lot of people to work on Christmas or New Year's Day. I get that. But hey, they're playing football today. That means there's thousands of workers out there that are involved in NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball, whatever it is, during these 2 weeks. So there's a lot of people working, and they're in the same similar neighborhood when it comes to the industry. So anyway, I would keep that in mind. I really would. I mean, I know there's one person I follow that does a really good thing, and that person makes sure that they have extra new content available. So when they've gone for the holiday period, there's new fresh stuff there for them. It may not be timely, like, hey, what's going on today? But there's enough stuff going on in the world where you don't have to be timely. And that should be appreciable. And it would be to me. And it is to me. And I think that that's a great idea. And I really wish more and more people would do that. This way, if they want to take off for a couple of weeks, hey, as long as you give them new content, I think that's great. Okay, next up, Seattle, Carolina. And I really like Seattle in this spot. I'm going to tell you why. Even though Seattle, and again, we have another situation. We have a playoff team against a team that needs to win to keep momentum going. It's a completely different deal. Okay? And here's why. If Carolina wins and upsets Seattle, they still need Tampa Bay to lose their game, which is also at 1:00 against Miami, in order for them to clinch the division. Meaning, it's even though, again, I still think Carolina has something to play for. There's no reason they're not going to sit anybody. There's no reason to sit anybody. They need to win the game. Well, they don't need to, but it's important that they win the game because Tampa Bay could lose. Tampa Bay is basically losing to everybody. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to lose to Miami, but anything could happen. Tampa Bay's streak has gotten really out of hand now. So Carolina knows, hey, if we can upset Seattle, then we have a shot to just, we don't have to go to Tampa Bay with a must-win type of situation. But you do have to keep that in mind, that Carolina, this game, it's really not about Carolina. It's about Tampa Bay. They're the team that has everything As strange as it sounds, and again, this is the whole motto of this video, as strange as it sounds, Tampa Bay is the team that controls their own destiny, not Carolina. Or, and that's just a crazy thing. And we talked about it last week. And Tampa Bay has really put themselves in a very good position because even though they have done nothing since the bye, they still control their own destiny. So I do think there's a little bit of a factor there. And I also think there's a factor which we've been talking about now for a couple of weeks, and that's Carolina can't win or lose back-to-back games. They have now alternated wins and losses for 9 consecutive. And if that continues, then that means they'll lose to Seattle. But the real reason why I'm going with Seattle, there's a few reasons. That is one of them. That look, psychologically, Carolina knows. They know deep down inside that as long as Tampa Bay wins, then this game will mean nothing. And hey, who knows? Maybe by halftime, if Tampa Bay is up 21-3, and this is a 10-7 Seattle game, and Carolina finds out that it's 20, and then they find out, oh yeah, that game's over. That this game now doesn't mean anything. I'm sorry, but that could have an effect. It's possible. And anytime that gets in the way when I'm handicapping games myself, because it's one of the things that you always have to look out for. And it's the thing we always strive for. It's not always 100%, but it's what we strive for is, do we know the team that we're investing our money in is going to play the game 100%? That they need the game, they want the game, that they're going to fight hard. And again, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it's one of those things that you want to check off the list immediately. Because what could happen is if in fact they don't, if you know they don't, again, if you know that, oh yeah, the game means nothing, they're not going to, they might still win the game, but the game doesn't mean anything. And you know this, they're not going to get their best effort. And if that happens, then why would you invest or want to invest your money on that team? So I think there's a little bit of a thing there with Carolina. It's not a lot, but it's just a little bit. And on top of that, and this is the most important thing, this is huge for Seattle. I was saying about the Chargers matchup with Houston, and I mentioned there was another team in the similar scenario, and well, you've seen it on the thumbnail. This is the other situation. Seattle, even though they beat the Rams, and I still don't know how they did that, but Seattle, if they lose this game to Carolina, and if the Rams and San Francisco win their games, and the Rams will win their game, and San Francisco is favored to win their game. They're both favored to win their game. So let's say they do that, and Seattle loses. That means that Seattle will go from a 1 seed to a 6 seed. Let's pop it up. So here you see that you got 11-4, 11-4, and 12-3. So the way that it is with these 3 teams is if they all get tied, it's San Francisco, the Rams, and Seattle. So that's how important this game is for Seattle. Now, they do play at San Francisco next week, and they could correct that. All right, and that is definitely in their hands. I completely get that. But what it just means is if you just have to look at it, because you say number 1 seed, and you're thinking, okay, well, all right, well, even if they lose a couple of games, I mean, come on, what are they going to be, the 3 seed? Or, oh, I see how the divisions are. Okay, well, yeah, I guess I do have to realize that. Well, 5 seed then? No, you could be 6 seed. And let's just say they're a 6 seed. And let's see, because they can't get further off because the Packers are at 7. So let's say the Packers are at 7, they'll stay there, and then you've got Seattle at 6. So that means that instead of being the number 1 seed and getting a bye, you would be the 6th seed, and that means you could play the Bears, you could play the Eagles, and you could you could also wind up playing the Rams or San Francisco. Is that what you want to do? Now, the Bears wouldn't scare me as much, being a new team on the block, but you get the point that this is definitely, even though they're coming off a huge win, so big, it's just so impactful. This is still a game that could take them from the 1 seed to the 6th seed. So, got to keep that in mind. And it is a big wake up. Now, you could also look at it if you want to, as like I said before, hey, they lose this game, they can come back next week, they can go to San Francisco, they can take care of business there, and then they win the division, okay? And everything's back to being okay, and they get a good seed, and everything's fine. Matter of fact, taking a look at the NFC seeding, okay, there's, of course, only 1 spot remaining. That's the South. Okay, so you got the six teams all the way down here. You got the Rams, San Francisco, the Eagles, Bears, and Seahawks. So now, and then Packers too. We're down to just the South. So that's it. So you got the 6 teams, and it's all South, and that's it. Panthers or Bucks. All right. So if Seattle wins their last 2 games, that's it. They're the number 1 seed. It's that simple. Okay, they don't have to worry about, because look, it's not really just about winning the division. It's about we're in the driver's seat to get a bye. We don't want to lose that. I mean, we won this game against the Rams, so we could be in this position. We have to take advantage of that. The worst thing that you can do, see, if this happened in week 6, then I absolutely would be on board with people who will go, oh, rebound, they're going to be flat. And I'm betting against them because of that. I'd be on board with that type of thinking. But at this point in the season now, it's about, we won that game. Incredibly, we won that game. And I'm sorry, but if you lose this week, some of that bravado, the accolades, the remembrance, some of that gets taken away. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want that to slip away. You have been given this chance. You've earned this chance. Now go out and take it. And that's what I expect the Seattle Seahawks to do. Now, look, they're not used to being in this spot. They ever get a second-year head coach. Maybe they aren't ready. Maybe they will find themselves in a situation this week where they can't deal with it. We'll find out on Sunday. But I think they've had such a good season that I think they are going to find out a way, especially on the road. They've won every game on the road this season as a favorite. 4-1 ATS. Now, if Seattle loses to Carolina, that means that San Francisco or Chicago, whoever wins that game, can win the bye by winning their final game. Okay, so that's, again, a big deal. If Seattle loses, San Francisco, Chicago winner controls their own destiny. Whoever wins that gets it. That's how big that San Francisco, Chicago game could be if Seattle loses, even though it's still going to be an interesting game and 2 playoff teams. But if Seattle loses, whoa, that really ups it. Now, the Rams can also get into this. If Seattle loses and the Rams win their last 2 games, what they need is the San Francisco-Chicago winner loses in week 18. So let's set up the Rams situation. If the Rams win their last two, which if they need to, they will, Atlanta, Arizona. Let's say Seattle loses to Carolina, okay? And let's say San Francisco beats Chicago. Okay, all of that sounds like it could happen. Heck, the Rams lost to Carolina just a few weeks ago at Carolina, so can Seattle. So if all of that happens, then the Rams will be, which is really crazy. Again, looking at the Rams as what? What are they? The 6th seed, 5th seed, 6th seed, right? 6th seed. That they're the 6th seed right now. That if all of that happens, like I said, that all the Rams then need is one thing. One thing. And that is for Seattle to beat San Francisco. And if that happens, the Rams win the division. And again, proves my point about, well, if Seattle loses to Carolina, they still got San Francisco next week, and they could, kind of get back, to reclaiming some of their status and some of their position. Well, it's not necessarily all in their hands. And the team that they just beat, that they had to do what they did on Thursday night last week, that team could come back and beat you and win the division if you lose. And the only way it can happen is if it would open the door. Still, things need to happen, but the only way that you can open that door for the Rams is by losing to Carolina on Sunday. So again, that's why I like Seattle, until Carolina can break that trend, especially winning 2 straight, winning 2 big games in a row. There's a lot of pressure on a team like that that's not used to winning and being in that position. And we'll see if Carolina can break that. Carolina is one of those teams that when we talked before the season about sleeper teams, I had Carolina up there as one of my sleeper teams. And so I really like what they're doing. I had promised that they could do this. I really like the hire of Canales. I like Bryce Young. I do not think he's ever going to live up to his status, but I still think he can be a really solid NFL quarterback. Again, they're well coached. They're a young team that's learning to win. This is only the beginning for Carolina, even if they fall short, which I don't know that's going to happen. But I will say this: if Tampa Bay beats Miami and they do it convincingly, then I think Carolina, I think they could be in trouble. I think the Carolina needs Tampa Bay to stay in this funk. And even if they beat them, let's say they beat Miami 12-10, 17-16, something like that. I don't think that's getting out of the funk. And I'd go with Carolina. And hey, Carolina fans are could also look like, hey, you know what? Just keep the trend going. Yes, lose to Seattle on Sunday and keep the trend going, because if that goes, next week will be Tampa Bay. So, and that could happen. All right, let's move on. Where are we? All right, next. Oh, here's that Pittsburgh-Cleveland game, going back to the AFC. And in this one, like I said, keep an eye on the Saturday night game with Baltimore. Remember, that is major. Baltimore loses. Pittsburgh wins the North. They'll be solidified with that number 4 seed. And you can see some starters not playing. I went over all that. Okay. In this one is also one of the there's only a couple of games that we definitely are looking at rain. This is one of them. Not going to be freezing or on the border of freezing rain. It's going to be about 45. That's what the temperature is going to be. So it'll be a little bit cool, but it will rain. And that's something. It's another reason why if Baltimore loses, you do not want any really important players out there in these types of conditions. You just don't. Now, here is a trend that works completely against Pittsburgh if you want to go down this road, especially because of the fact I'm doing that, because again, I'm taking Green Bay, and I think that Cleveland can win this one with Mason Rudolph there. Now, look, I don't know. Maybe Aaron Rodgers will still play. I got no idea. I haven't looked at any of that stuff, but Pittsburgh is 3-17 against the spread on the road when they're coming off a win and playing an opponent with a win percentage of 3-3 or less. And they're 0-1 this year in that trend. So that continues. 3-17 ATS. And so I'm going to go ahead and take Cleveland in this one. And to throw a nice little cherry on top, the Browns have beaten the Steelers 3 straight times, straight up and against the spread at home. We talked about Pittsburgh and their injuries, and maybe they'll be sitting some players. Well, Cleveland, Judkins is now on IR, so he's out for the rest of the year. And they also have couple other running backs banged up, offensive linemen banged up. So there are guys that are but hey, Cleveland last week still gave it a game against Buffalo, and that's why, and they've been giving it a game all season at home. They've been a very tough team at home, and I think that will continue against their rivals on Sunday afternoon. Let's now move on to the next game. This one, the only thing that really matters in this game, it's about the seeding. So let's take a look at it. The Patriots, where are they? Of course, they're already in the playoffs. And here is how it's going to work regarding the number 1 seed in the AFC. Let's see if I can pop this back up. Okay, so here you got the Patriots sitting there as the number 2 seed. And they are equal with the Broncos, a game ahead of Jacksonville. All right. So the way this is going to work for the Patriots and is how it's going to work for Denver. Okay, so there are 2 spots remaining, as I mentioned before when we talked about Houston. This is not what we're going to get into because Patriots are in. Talking about the 1 seed. Now, Denver can sew up the 1 seed. They got to win their 2 games. That's it. They win their next 2. They're the 1 seed. But what if Denver loses? Let's say they lose in their game against Kansas City, which I don't think they're going to do. I don't know what's going on now. I got no idea. But let's say they lose against the Chargers next week. Okay. If that happens and the Patriots then win their next 2 games against teams that they should beat, because after this, they'll be taking on the Miami Dolphins at home. And we know how the Dolphins, I know Tua is not going to play, but it's still the Dolphins. And it's a warm weather team in a cold weather January game, and probably not real good for the Dolphins, who will be looking forward to the offseason already. So that more than likely means if Denver does not win their next 2 games, that the Patriots are going to more than likely capture the number 1 seed in the bye. So it looks like their only chance, or the chance that works against them the most, is this week, because it's on the road. And look, I don't think it's happening. I think the Patriots are going to win. I don't know if they'll cover. The only reason I say that is because I think it's real important. Aaron Glenn is going to really try hard to get this team focused this week. He wants them to play hard, which they have been. But he really wants to. He really needs them to play close, because the defense has just been letting them down. That's why they fired the defensive coordinator, and that's a big mess on that side of the ball with all the trades and everything. And it's finally catching up to them between trades and injuries. But more importantly, just because they're at home and it's the final home game, and look, there is just a lot of stupid talk going on in the New York circles, especially on YouTube. And I plan on, and I will, give me a couple of weeks at the most, but I will. I'm gonna do a show, do a video Now I don't know if it'll be on this channel because I can't be putting Jet stuff out there on Proline TV with my partners. But I'll probably put it on Prime Sports Network. That's my other channel. And I might start doing more Jet stuff because we're getting into the off season, which is always the big part of the season for the Jets. So I'm probably going to start doing that because I'm just very disappointed in the videos I see out there for the Jets. It's just a one tune. It's the same tune. Nobody has any foresight. Everybody is just, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you cover a team in any sport and you do it for a living on a daily basis, it really, I understand. I don't condone it, but I understand when you have no alternative but to go dark. You've got to be negative and you got to slam the team. That's what keeps your viewership up. You don't want them disappearing. You want them to vent. You want to, I'm right there with you. Yeah, they suck. Yeah, 15 years, no playoffs. They suck. Hey, is Aaron Glenn going to get fired? Talk, which came out of nowhere. Mike Florio is such a moron. All this other stuff. And I get it. And I get it because, like I said, what else are you going to talk about? You can't be positive all the time about a team that loses and gets blown out. You're going to be negative. Okay. But I do believe that if that's your responsibility and that's what you commit to, I just think that you have to I'm sorry, but you have to be you. And I think if you are you and that's you, then I think that's bad. And that's the reason why I'm going to be starting to do a few of those videos myself. I've got to get back to the perspective that needs to be. And look, I was doing Jet shows every week. And I stopped it a couple of years ago. And I was doing it I think I did it for years. And I even did it when I had a partnership with Dan Leberfeld, who's the editor of Jets Confidential. And we did it for years. And we did it on radio when I was down in South Florida. We did Jet stuff. And so but at some point a couple of years ago, I had to admit to myself, I can't do this anymore right now. I can't do it because I can't, I'm not going to have a whole lot of things to say to fans during this losing that's going on that's really going to help matters. And so I was like, if I'm just sitting talking about the team in a positive light 50% of the time, which is what I would do, sooner or later that's going to go hollow. And it's not what really most fans want to hear. And that's why I said I understand why they do it. So I plan on coming back and doing it on a weekly basis. And I'm actually thinking of starting with maybe every other week during the offseason and maybe giving it a go, because that's how confident I am that things are going to change next season. Because I didn't say that the team was going to be a playoff team this season. I expected to be better than they are, no doubt about it. But again, you start off with injuries, you throw in the trades, and your quarterback stinks again, and it's over. It was, again, and the schedule, the toughest part of their schedule happened to be the beginning of the season. And so everything went wrong. And so it's like, yeah, it's just, hey, that's what it happens. What are you going to do? So I understand that perspective. I really do. But the reason I brought this up also is I really feel that Aaron Glenn is going to have this team as ready as possible. Now, next week, I don't know how that's going to work out, but I think he's putting all of his chips into this one last game. He doesn't, if it's his druthers, he's all in this week, and next week he'll go blow out next week. He wants this week. I'm not saying to win. Of course, that would be great, but he just wants this team to be in the game in the fourth quarter. That's all he's hoping for. The problem is he's got Brady Cook at quarterback. And that's the thing. I don't know if the Patriots. Now look, the Patriots still have injuries on defense, and that's the thing that you're going to have to look at. Let me see if we see any updated injury reports, because once again, the defense, did not have a good go at it. They were able to come up with that big turnover there at the end. That really helped them. But look, are you going to play Travion Henderson after coming off a concussion? No. Why would you do that? Let's see. But getting back to now the defensive part, Spillane's been out. I don't see why you would play him. Landry's banged up still. Carlton Davis. Let's see. Anybody else on defense? You even have Booty coming off a concussion. Why would you play him? Milton Williams hasn't played in a while. This is definitely not the week to. I think he's back at practice, if I'm not mistaken. They don't have an update here, but I think I heard he was back to practice, so that's good news. But yeah, look, they still have the injuries on defense, a couple of key injuries, and I think that's again, do the Jets have a way to combat that? Not really, but I think it's a big difference when you have a rookie quarterback out there going up against a fully healthy defensive team. So and it is, I think, his third start, so he should be a little bit better. But I don't expect it. The thing is, it's a big number. The Jets covered, what was it, last month when they played? Mid-November they played. So, and that was a tight game until really late. But the Jets were in definitely a much different position than they're in now. So I don't know. Look, Jets have lost their last 3 games by a 111-36 margin. I'm not betting the game, but if I did, I think you have to go with the Patriots. I don't see why you would take the Jets in this spot if you're taking the game. But again, now you know what the deal is with the Patriots. Let's now talk about, I think we're going to talk about the Jags next. Oh, not yet. Tampa Bay and Miami. All right, now this line is getting bigger, okay, which is not a surprise. This was actually my wise guy pick of the week, the Bucks, because I was really surprised the line started out at 5.5. I thought this line was going to be about 10, somewhere in that range. And the reason I thought that was because of what happened last week. I mean, the Dolphins got, handed to them by the Bengals, who are not a playoff team, had not had a good year at all year. And the Bucks at least have something to play for. And even though they're losing games they shouldn't, they're losing close games. They're in games. They're such in a bad way psychologically that they can't make the big play. But now you're playing a Dolphin team, just like I was saying with the Jets with their quarterback situation. Now they're playing, a rookie quarterback. You've got a little film on them. This is a team that it's really about one player. It's A-Chain. You just got to stop A-Chain. Now, the Bucks defense has definitely been a problem. They're not good on the pass rush. That's why Jason Pierre-Paul came back out of retirement. They're looking for anybody to help him in that department. But look, Joe Burrow lit up the Dolphins defense, and I don't see any reason why I'm going to believe that Baker is not going to be able to do something similar. And therefore, I can sit here and tell you about their struggles on defense. But the fact is, they just right now, Miami can't stop. I think, the injuries, the realization that it's really over. Look, Brewer, I don't know if he didn't practice on Wednesday. That would be a major loss for the Dolphins. He's had a fantastic season. So keep an eye on that for Aaron Brewer. Look, Fitzpatrick's banged up. Why would he play? There's no reason for him to play. I mentioned Brewer. James Daniels is out for the season. So that's a couple of guys on the interior, which would be a big loss. And then just taking a look overall. Let's see. Here's the Dolphins on the Arled's depth chart. So this is their defensive situation here. So, they've got they still have some nice players, but the secondary is an issue right now. And I'm really surprised that they played well enough earlier in the season But you take Fitzpatrick out of that secondary too, it's just not in a good. It's not in a good way. But more importantly, because take a look at Tampa Bay, and there's no injury excuse on offense now. None. Even though Bredesen's out, okay. The fact is, if someone were to say to you, "Are you going to have an injury or two on your offense? Where do you want it?" You'd go guard, and that's exactly where the injuries are for Tampa Bay on offense. That's it. Everybody else is healthy. Everybody. So in order for Miami to beat Tampa Bay, they're going to have to put up points. They're going to have to do it with a rookie quarterback. And a rookie late round quarterback, and I just can't see that. I know that they're playing rough right now, the Bucks, but it's one thing to do that. And again, we're talking about the timing of it. You played Atlanta. That's a division opponent. They were, Kirk Cousins started to get a little rhythm going. People are now seeing that if Kirk Cousins can play, 10 games, he could be okay. He's not terrible, but you can't just throw him out there in this first game at his age and expect him to do well. He needs a little time. He's got to get up to speed, and that's why you're seeing Atlanta be, at least offensively, be a little bit more competitive now. And then, of course, you saw what happened with the Carolina game. Again, a game that they should have won or could have won, that they had the ball in their hands late. And had that late interception on a miscommunication because everything's going bad for them at the wrong time. So how do you correct that with Miami this week? You don't allow it to be a fourth quarter game. You take care of business early. You get on top early. You don't make it a game, and it's over early. And again, so that's what I really expect to happen. The Bucks have won one game since the bye. They're 0-7 against the spread since the bye, which is just amazing. And look, even though Ewers put up decent numbers outside the 2 picks last week, it was the Bengals, okay? So you got to keep that in mind. And even though the Bucks have not had a great go of it this season on defense, because of those injuries, which began in camp with the pass rush. The fact is they're a better defense than Cincinnati. So, and they will blitz. And so Quinn Ewers is definitely going to be under duress. Look, I like Quinn. The Quinn Ewers a couple of years ago, there was a lot of talk about Quinn Ewers being a top draft pick. And then the injury occurred, and then there was just there was a lot that just all of a sudden, matter of fact, taking a look, let's see what our lads had to say about Quinn. All right, now here's a guy that they had as 4th round, 5th round, okay, and they wound up getting as a bonus. I don't know why he lasted to the 7th round, but the year before he decided to come out, there was speculation as Quinn Ewers as a 1st-round draft pick. And that's how bad his final season was. So let's see. Usually you find out the worst of a player really back here. So let's see. Here, went backwards in his final year when it came to ball protection. Doubled his career total interceptions in 2024 alone. Fumbles. Does not process well against pressure or the blitz. So Todd Bowles is going to throw the kitchen sink at him. Mechanics could be an issue. Again, missed games because of injuries. That's a big deal of why he lasted late. And then to wrap it up, again, a lot of it too does have to do with him, not being the biggest guy or the most athletic. And that's where the injury risk comes about. He is a high floor backup who could work his way into a starter's role down the road. And I completely agree with that. So we'll see whether or not he could have a really good follow-up game and one more game after that. Okay, so I like Tampa Bay. I think it would be embarrassing if it would be the most embarrassing, as disappointing as Todd Bowles was in their loss to Atlanta. This would be worse if they kept it close. They could win the game, and I think they'd be more embarrassed if they kept it close. They need to hammer the Dolphins, end this quick, put even Mike McDaniel out of his misery too. All right, here's the Jacksonville game. Now, let's get back into the number 1 seed deal. If Denver does not win their last 2 games, and if the Patriots lose one of their 2 games, so let's say, for crazy's sake, that the Jets pull off the upset against the Patriots on Sunday, and Denver loses to the Chargers, Jacksonville wins the number 1 seed by winning their final 2 games. How about that? So we've gone over Denver. We've gone over New England. We've also gone over, now we've gone over Jacksonville. We went over the Chargers too. Again, keeping in mind that they still have a shot to be the number 1 seed overall. And let's see. Okay. Because there's one more team that we'll talk about as far as the number 1 seed. Okay. So Jacksonville, 6 over the Colts, who are reeling. I was so surprised that their defense played so pathetically the other night. I was shocked. We talked about that game last week, and it was like, I picked the Colts to win. And I said, as long as their defense comes through and does a decent enough job, I think they'll do it. I really do. I think it's a home game. I think they'll get fired up for that. And look, they got off to a good start. And here's another tip. If you're not used to it, I know most of our viewers are, because most of our viewers who follow us, follow Jim, follow Mark. These are expert handicappers, been around for a long time. They know the tricks of the trade. But just don't, sometimes you need to be reminded too. I did it. If you're getting, let's say you're in this situation this week, and let's say you like the Colts and you take the Colts at 225, and the Colts march down the field in their opening kickoff and score a touchdown, you're going to now be in position to wager on depending on what the line change will be, but there will be a change in the line. And you need to take advantage of that. Not necessarily this week. This is the point. So if you take a 7-point dog, a 10-point dog, a 4-point dog, and you immediately take the lead, you're in great position to hedge your bet in some way, shape, or manner. But I just could not believe how the Colts defense just imploded. I mean, wow. I'm sorry, but you can say what you want about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has not had a great season. And they made Brock Purdy look like the one from 2 years ago. So it was awful. I think it's over now for the Colts. The same way I was talking about all these other teams. They now know it's over. I think the only thing that got going for him is Phillip Rivers did not come back out of retirement to just go through the motions. But you know what? It didn't help him anyway, because the offense did their part. It was the defense. And if one side of the ball is just, that's it. Our defense sucks. They are still dealing with key injuries. Let's see what the latest status we have here with the Colts injuries. All right, let's see. Sauce is still questionable. He's been out too long. You got Buckner. Couple of the guys. I mean, this is really the huge loss. Next season, and I would expect that they're going to resign Daniel Jones. Look, Daniel Jones, the injury he had, his contract negotiations power is gone. So the Colts will be able to get him at a decent price. There's no reason to think they won't go for him. I don't know where else they would go. Why would you go anywhere else? You still have Richardson. You could probably bring him back too. And then what you do is you go into the draft and you take someone somewhere. You try to do like the Dolphins, 7th round guy, Jets, Brady Cook. You go after a guy like that, maybe even a little earlier in the draft, and just see if you get lucky. And then you see if you can get a healthy Daniel Jones next year. And if so, then you should be in good position, because you start the season, if everything goes well with players, contracts, all that, with Javarius Ward on one side and Sauce Gardner on the other. That could end up being the best corner duo in the league. Okay, that's how good these guys are. Ward is an underrated kid. And then you throw in a healthy DeForest Buckner, et cetera, another offseason where you can, maybe bring in a few more guys. And now you've got, start the season off, a lot of positive, MO there. But I think it's over for him. I just do. I think it's it. They're just, what are you going to do? And the offensive line gave him protection. I just think that's another thing that sooner or later, they're just banged up on that side. You can't do it every week. Sooner or later, it's just, you don't have the talent. Guys are banged up on that side of the ball. I mean, I don't know if the center is going to be available. I don't know, what were they down to, the 3rd string center or something like that? They got a couple other guys banged up as well up front. Let's see. Is Raymond back? Looks like he's healthy. Good. That's good. So at least it looks like they're going to get one of their other guys back. But Braden Smith being out too. So anyway, now let's go inside the numbers. And this is a big one. This is the one that just puts it over the top for me to take Jacksonville. Jacksonville in this series, okay, 12-9 straight up, 17-3-1 against the spread against the Colts in their last 21 games. That's right, 17-3-1 against the spread. And of course, they beat the Colts earlier this year. And that was part of their 6-game winning streak. And I've been saying this now every week I've been saying this for the past 2 weeks. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And that's the margin of victory for the Jags during this winning streak. 205-92. That's the margin of victory during the winning streak. 5 of 6 wins by 14 or more, including the Colt win, 36-19. That was back on December 7th, just a few weeks ago. So I'm all over the Jags here. How do you not take the Jags right now? I do not see them in a situation where they're just going to go, yeah, we should cruise here. No, this is a division game. That's when you know that you're going to get your best effort. They're just through the roof with confidence. You got the other team that their confidence is shot. They've lost 5 straight, 2 teams going in opposite directions. And throw it on top. Like I said, if Denver, the Patriots, especially the Patriots, because Denver could clearly lose to the Chargers. So if you're looking at it from the Patriots side, the Jags are saying, hey, we just need one upset. Just give us one upset. And if we can get an upset, we can win the number 1 seed and get the bye. And that's why I see no reason to think that they won't continue to roll here. And so I would jump over the Jags in this one. Here's a game that doesn't mean anything. Here's another game that doesn't mean anything, because both of these teams are now a little bit far away. I mean, the Titans they're closer regarding the top pick, but that was a really big it was nice, they got the win over the Chiefs, but we all know what happened there. Look, the Titans don't need a quarterback, and it's not like this is one of those drafts where there's like a Hunter, in other words, another position player or two where you go, oh, we got to be number 2 with Carter or number 3 with Hunter, or, these 2 or 3 guys after the quarterbacks. So we got to be there. They're just, no, this yeah, they're nice players out there. Don't get me wrong, but there's just none of those guys this year that are just. I mean, I think some of the guys that really stick out probably are receivers, but you got some good guys there. So I think Tennessee might have ended up with the number one receiver on the board, no matter where they draft in the top 5 or 6. So this is a game really with no ramifications for the picks. This is the Giants and the Raiders. One of these fan bases will shake their head on Sunday night in complete disgust that they won. And the other will be really, 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 really happy because the other will be in total control of the number 1 pick. Now, if it's the Raiders, that means welcome to Las Vegas, Mr. Mendoza. And look, I think that'd be great for the Raiders, great for the franchise, great for the NFL to have the Raiders in that type of position. Hey, as a Jet fan that needs a quarterback, I don't care. That's another thing I'll talk about on that video. I do not care about Mendoza. I think he's going to be a fine NFL player. I think he's going to be another young quarterback that the NFL desperately needs. He's going to be successful and all of that. But he is not elite. He is not going to be a superstar. Therefore, if I have to trade up to get a guy like that, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested as a fan. Now, look, if that's what happens, then I'm behind my guys. My point is I'm not going to care about it. I'm not going to go crazy about it. I'm not going to be, oh man, this would be great if we can get Mendoza. No, I don't look at it that way. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. What's going to be great, what is the absolute home run, and I will put out this video, is if they end up with Mr. Philadelphia Eagle. So I'm a big fan. And matter of fact, let me see what Arledge has for his scouting report. Because I noticed we have a video, Syverson and I, on Tanner McKee from 3 years ago when he came out of Stanford. And we had a video of Tanner McKee 2 years ago. It'll be 3 years ago. Because we both liked him as a sleeper quarterback. You can see he was a 6th rounder. So I'm going to get clips of that video and I'm going to play it for when I put a video out talking about this is the home run for the Jets, not Mendoza. This is it. Make a trade for Tanner McKee with the Eagles. So Arledge had him as a 4th or 5th rounder, and he went in the 6th. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. What do we have here? Is a classic drop back passer. Good touch and tempo. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing here that, and again, keeping in mind that this is not Dave Syvertson's scouting report. So Dave and I really liked Tanner a lot better than the official Arledge scouting report. And then all Tanner did, or all Tanner has done since he came into the league, or just the last couple of years, preseason, you had an opportunity to see him play against I forget who it was, the last game of the season last year when he just lit it up. So look, that's what you do. You do not have to give up like the type of draft capital that you have to give up to get Mendoza either. So you can give the Eagles some sort of draft compensation, and then you get a quarterback that is ready. It will be in his 3rd year. And now you've skipped the whole process of having to wait a couple of years for the guy to develop. You've got a guy that's developed, is ready to go. And that's how you turn your team around in 2026. Now, if you want to turn your team around in 2027 or 2028, then I guess you do whatever you can to get Mendoza. But all of that is moot if the New York Giants lose and the Raiders win. Because if the Giants, well, the other way, because of course, if the Giants end up losing and get the pick, they're trading out and they're going to be taking, hey, who wants to, Raiders might even be the one that comes calling more than the Jets. So, but that'll be the battle, depending on exactly who it is that really wants Mendoza that bad. All of this, though, does not matter if the Giants beat the Raiders. If that happens, then Mendoza's going to Las Vegas. Now, we've got the same line, but a much bigger game. Bills and Philly. I mentioned there's another team that still has a chance, and believe it or not, it's the Buffalo Bills for the number 1 seed. That's right. You heard it here. The Buffalo Bills still can win the number 1 seed in the AFC East. Right now, in the AFC. Right here is the 6th seed. And how can they do that? Well, look, they're only a game back. Okay, so what needs to happen? Denver loses to the Chargers. Patriots lose one of their 2 games. More than likely, let's say the Jets. Jacksonville loses one of their 2 games. More than likely this week to the Colts. And they need the Chargers to win both of their games. Not only beat the Broncos, which gets 2 birds, 1 stone, but they then also have to beat Houston this week. So the Bills are out of it. And they got to win their 2 games, but the Bills are out of it if the Chargers lose to Houston on Saturday. They'll know early. That's it. No chance for that first round bye if Houston beats the Chargers. But if the Chargers win, then it's up to the rest. You need to see all the other things happen. Probably not going to happen. These teams right now are just too good at this stage of the season versus the competition they're playing for all of this to happen. But hey, they still have a chance. Now, getting back to the game, both of these teams are in the playoffs. I don't think we'll see these teams in the Super Bowl, but it's not the craziest idea in the world. This is going to be as wide open as a playoff as we've seen maybe in a long time, especially the AFC. Boy, the AFC now, there is no Joe Burrow. There is no Lamar Jackson, probably, and there's no Patrick Mahomes. That leaves Josh Allen and a wide open AFC. So this is Josh's chance. I don't know if McDermott gets fired if they don't get to the Super Bowl. I think he should be, because again, it's now your chance. It's your chance now. Now, I like the Bills in this one. And the reason I like them is they're dialed in now, at least as a team. It doesn't mean that they're playing great rush defense. I get that. But they're dialed in now as a team, confidence-wise, that, hey, even if we give up 200 yards rushing, we'll still find a way to win. Josh will still find a way for us to win. They have not felt that way most of the season. But now, I think what you have to do is also look at it like this is the Buffalo Bills. This is what you should expect. That now that we're getting to the postseason, now it's time to ramp things up. Okay, especially when you continuously lose in the playoffs. This is what matters, the postseason. This is what matters, getting better at the right time. I don't know if it's possible for them to win a Super Bowl with their rush defense. I'm definitely, matter of fact, let me see here. I'm going to write a note for myself. Check Buffalo rush defense versus Super Bowl. Because what I want to do is find out is how bad was what's the worst Super Bowl winner? What's their rush defense? The worst rushing defense for a Super Bowl winner? What is it? Now, that's what I want to find out. Because if it's what I think it should be, meaning middle of the road, then yeah, I don't know how the Bills can win a Super Bowl that way. I just don't know how. If you have to stop the run. You just can't be, it makes it to where you have to be too perfect if you can't do that. Now, can they get Ed Oliver back? look, Ed Oliver's not a superstar, but Ed Oliver is a very good player. He's turned into a very good player. And look, even Phillips is banged up inside. And there's Daquan Jones, who's banged up inside. But if they can get him back. Now here, there's a chance. It would be more after the season. We know that. It's kind of up to where that's kind of where his window would open up anyway. Okay. So that could be the answer right there. Is can he be back in time, say, for the championship game? And I also think, and I said this the last couple of weeks, and I'll keep saying it, I think the Bills not winning the division is going to be a good thing for them. I've seen this before. Teams that, hey, we've got the number 1 seed. Hey, we've got the home field advantage, all that. But we can't win it. We can't break through. We can't break through. And then all of a sudden, you have to do it from the wild card. We saw the Chiefs as a primary example. Sometimes you can do that. Now, good. They didn't need to do that because they did it the other way as well. But I'm just talking. I've seen it before where good teams just find, and whether it's the pressure's off, that's a big thing, I think. Sometimes it's better for you to be on the road in the playoffs for the majority of the time, if not every game. And I just think that, and now as far as this game, again, getting back to why I like them, it's because they're on this roll I like them, because they don't want to get off of this roll. This is important to keep this going because they are playing every game like it matters, even though they're in the playoffs, but it still matters. Hey, we still have a chance for a bye. We're going to go out there. We're going to still play. Now, look, they might wind up the last game of the season. It means nothing. Doesn't mean a thing. Okay, we've been down this road before. Let's just rest everybody, and we'll be ready to go next week, even though we don't even win the division. That could happen, and that's fine. If it's one game, end of the season, you win 5 straight, you go into the playoffs, you lose that game, momentum's not gone. You're still that 5-win straight team that you pick things up in the playoffs. So that's why I'm going. And look, this is a team that also, during the streak, won at Foxborough and at Pittsburgh, 2 of the better teams in the AFC. And I think now Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's playing like that for the first time all season. Now, some people might point out that the Bills are 1-4 as a home favorite this year against the spread. But don't worry about that because they've won 4 out of those 5. And this is only a 1-point spread, as you can see here. So I'm taking the Bills. I'm not impressed by the Eagles just yet. Yes, they've played better the last couple of weeks, but they've also played a couple of hacks. So it doesn't matter. Now, this is when we're going to find out whether the Eagles have really turned their own corner. So, yeah, this is a real important game for that reason for both teams. And look, one of the teams can lose as well. Let's just say if the Eagles lose this game and it's 28-27, Eagles went for 2 at the end and they lose it. That's not going to change their opinions of themselves or my opinion of them. But if the Bills win this game and the Eagles start looking more and more like the team from, say, a few weeks ago when they weren't, at their best and they've been mostly inconsistent this season, then, yeah, I don't see it. But they're definitely going to try now that they've won a few games here. They're going to try and get some momentum going like the Bills have gotten. We'll see if they can do that. This is also important. As the defending Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles have yet to be a dog. Keep that in mind. They're the dog in this one, at least for now. And then we've got the Bears and the Niners. And this one is, where do we have that information here? Don't have much left. This is only a couple more. So you got the Bears and the Niners on Sunday Night Football. And let's talk about the importance here. We've already gone over a few of these. Let's pop up here it is. Okay. So here you go. Bears, who are on some kind of crazy ride. where whatever they touch is golden. And as a fan of a team like that, that's just it's really what you live for as a fan, especially when you have a losing team for the most part over the years. These types of seasons, a new coach, a new hot coach, you got a young quarterback. I mean, there's no better thing to be a part of as a football fan. This is what it's all about. And they're having so much fun as Bear fans, and they deserve it. It's great to see a legendary franchise like this win. And again, it doesn't matter how. And I'm sure the fans feel the same way. Just they're enjoying the ride. Can he win a Super Bowl? No. They're not winning a Super Bowl. It ain't happening. But that doesn't matter. They're in the playoffs now. They're going to get their feet wet. They're going to get experience. And then next year, if they have a really good offseason, it can come into the season as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Now, I mentioned before what Chicago needs. Okay, just to remind you, if Seattle loses to Carolina and Chicago, really it's for both teams. So let's just look at it both ways for Chicago and San Francisco. If Seattle loses, the winner of this game will be in control. And what they need to do in the final week of the season is win. Now, if it's San Francisco, they go right up against Seattle. If it's Chicago, they host Detroit. And we just saw what happened to Detroit today, and it's not looking good. The Detroit Lions will care or be invested in that one. So it is very possible, and I think likely, that if Seattle loses to Carolina, or if they lose to San Francisco next week, that Chicago, if they can beat San Francisco, will get the number 1 seed. I truly believe that. I think if Chicago, I think that's what, because I'm not saying I think Seattle's going to lose. I don't. I think Seattle's going to, I honestly think Seattle is going to end up winning these last 2 games. I think that if they have a loss in them, you know what? I think it's going to be this week. I really do. I think if Seattle loses one of these 2 weeks, I think it's this week. I think it's the hangover for them. And Carolina wins, and Carolina gives Tampa Bay a chance to lose to Miami and clinch. But I think that's the most possible. That's what I think. But for Chicago, honestly, do I see them being the number 1 seed? Yeah, you know what? Why not? The season they're having, I actually like him in this game because I think they're a better team than San Francisco. I think San Francisco, when they're healthy, is a better team, but they're not. And all San Francisco has continued to do all season long is beat inferior teams on their schedule. And that's what they need to do, because with all of their primary players out, they've been able to take care of the business at hand with the schedule. And even when they're beating winning teams, the winning teams are beating, like the Colts, are not really tough teams to beat. So this is now a situation where they're stepping up in competition, and you just got to wonder about how much longer Chicago can do this, though. So that's the thing. How much longer can they do this? Well, they're 4-1-1 against the spread in their last 6 as a road dog. So as the season has gone on, as they get more and more comfortable with Ben Johnson's offense and the team in general, they have been really good in this spot. They have won 4 straight up games as a road dog in their last 6, including the win at Philadelphia a few weeks ago. Don't forget about that one. And they will clinch the NFC North and the number 2 seed with just 1 win in the next 2 games. So, keep that in mind. Both of these teams have a lot to play for. They're both in the playoffs, but they have a lot to play for. Buys, the division, so Chicago, if they lose this game, then next week, there's a possibility that they'll be in a position where, hey, you know what? We have to beat Detroit or else we could lose the division to the Packers. So, this is very important for both of these teams. All right. San Francisco, again, just like the Chargers, really, this is the ironic thing. Remember, the Chargers and the Niners are in the same position. They control their own destiny. As crazy as that sounds, neither team is currently leading their division with 2 weeks to go, but they control their own destiny. So if San Francisco wins this game against Chicago, then it does not matter what Seattle does. San Francisco knows they're playing Seattle next week at home for the NFC West title. Same thing that's going on with the Chargers. Chargers beat Houston. Doesn't matter what Denver does. It's Chargers, Denver, in Denver for the AFC West crown. So keep an eye on Kittle. He got banged up in the game last week. He's been banged up all year. Keep an eye on those two receivers for the Bears, Dunze and Burden. See if either one of them are going to be back as well. But again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm taking the Bears. They're just too hot right now. I'll say this. This is, again, one of those games where if I'm taking it, I'm taking the Bears. I'm not taking San Francisco. I'm not going up against this Bears team, especially because I have to give up points. I know it's only 3, but I'm not doing it. Not against the Bears, the way they're going. And, if anything, this is going to be real important, too, for San Francisco. I need, at least, I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I need to see myself, is San Francisco for real? Just how for real is San Francisco with all their injuries? And this is going to be a game that's going to tell me that, considering the Bears really have something to play for, just like the Niners do. And then we wrap it up with the Rams and the Falcons. Again, the Rams can still clinch the division. Same situation that we were talking about before. If Seattle loses to Carolina and the Rams can win their next 2 games, they can clinch as long as the San Francisco Bears winner loses next week. So the Rams have a shot. They are 9-1. Check this out. They're 9-1 against the spread their last 10 after they play Seattle. Now, sometimes some of those trends don't mean anything, but I mentioned it because I think there's a little bit that kind of does in those circumstances because, just because of the fact that, a rival can kind of get you to play your best football. And then I don't think that disappears the very next week. So, and now at this time of the season too, I think that's amped up even more because that's, the Rams, even though they're a playoff team, there's a lot of importance going on here to get back, into the winning column. They still have something to play for, all of that seeding. I do wonder about, I mentioned the Bills in this situation. I do wonder about the Rams as a road team having maybe to not play a home game. And I think I feel more comfortable with the Bills doing this than the Rams. At Stafford's age as well, having to win potentially 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl, just to get there. But for the Rams and Stafford, the more games Matthew Stafford has to play, the more of a chance you're inviting a potential injury because we're getting later in the season. This is an older player that's had some injury histories lately. And you just want to avoid as much contact this late in the season as possible. So, but look, they may not have an alternative. Who would they match up better with? Let's see. So right now, let's see. Everything happens the way the favorites say it's going to happen. Okay. So if that happens and the Rams, let's say they sit here as a 6th seed. Okay, because the Packers aren't going to catch them. I guess the Packers could catch them, but they're not. We're not losing 3 straight to end the season. So Let's see. Let's say the Rams are the 6th seed, then that means they are going to have to play the Eagles again, potentially. How about that? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't everybody like to see a rematch of last year's Ram-Eagles playoff game that came that close to the Rams beating the Eagles, who would have gone to win the Super Bowl? And what happened earlier this season when it looked like the Rams were going to beat the Eagles and let the Eagles win on that blocked field goal. And that is something to note. If you've been too busy with your holiday week this week, they fired their special teams coordinator, the Rams. And that special teams unit has been pretty bad this season. And McVay had enough. It let him down on that punt return for a touchdown. It opened the floodgates against Seattle. If they don't give up the punt return touchdown in the game, it's over. The Rams win. There was no way the Seattle was coming back in that game. No way that they were going to march down the field twice and then throw on the 2-point. It wasn't happening. But they got the punt return touchdown, and that opened everything up. Chase Blackburn fired, gone. We'll see what kind of effect that has. But this is the reason why I like the Rams this week, or part of the reason. The Rams 12-2 against the spread as a road favorite since the 2022 season. 5-1 in that role this year. I think coming off a loss, I expect them to come out firing this week. 6-0 straight up and against the spread in their last 6 games following a straight up loss. How about that? 3-0 this year. So talk about the Lions and how they've responded in the past. Well, the Rams are sort of building their own, we don't double up on losses. They're not where the Lions were or Dan Campbell, but they're getting there with McVay, and I expect that to go to 7-0. Here's an interesting thing, though. If you want to take Atlanta to make you comfortable, the Falcons are 2-0 in primetime games this year. The Rams are 0-2 in primetime games. How about that? Interesting. Okay. Oh, and what were those 2 wins for Atlanta? Upset Buffalo, upset Tampa Bay. So they're trying to go for 3 upsets in primetime games this season. And will that be enough to hold on to Raheem Morris? Look, if they beat the Rams, he's not going anywhere. I actually still think he's probably not going anywhere anyway. That Falcon organization and Arthur Blank, you know, he's not quick to pull the trigger very often. So I think he's going to give Raheem a little bit of a leash here. But I think that's because of the way the team has been performing lately. Look, if they get blown out in these last 2 games of the season, maybe that's it. It's all he needs to see, and he's gone. I don't know. You know, I look forward to talking to my Atlanta Falcons insider, Kevin Knight. We'll talk to him, find out what's going on there. Look, I'm not a Raheem Morris guy. I don't think Raheem Morris is the answer at Atlanta. I think if I'm a fan, I'm hoping they move on. I know Kevin likes Raheem, so maybe I'm wrong. He knows him more than I do. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like I said, if they can pull off the upset against the Rams with the way they played recently, then maybe that's what he needs to keep his job if his job is on the line. And that is going to do it. So a lot in there regarding the games this week and the scenarios. I've gone over, look, I'm not going to go over ties. I'm not going to go over mathematical computers, tiebreakers and stuff. With small percentages to succeed. But I went over everything else possible regarding the playoff scenarios for you guys to check out. And I'm going to give it to you here now, all in a row. Within these next, I'm going to give it to you here. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe we can even make a short out of this. Or maybe I can make a short out of this. But let me just go over their playoff scenario for the AFC and the NFC quickly. So again, the AFC, there are 2 spots remaining, 1 in the AFC North. That's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers more than likely. The other looks like it's going to be the Houston Texans. They need to win just 1 of their 2 or get a cult loss in one of their last two, and Houston will get the number 7 seed. So it's looking like Pittsburgh and Houston will round out the AFC. It's not set in stone. The Colts still have a legitimate chance. Of course, they need a little bit of help, but if really more than anything, what the Colts need is beat Jacksonville, have Houston lose to the Chargers, and the Colts will play Houston next week for the final playoff spot in the AFC. As far as the bye in the AFC, Denver needs 2 wins. If they get it, they've got the number 1 seed locked up. If they lose to the Chargers, then New England can win their final 2 games and they get the number 1 seed. If Denver and New England lose, that opens the door for Jacksonville. They get 2 wins. They get the number 1 seed. And then we're not done, because if Denver, New England, and Jacksonville were to lose, the Chargers can win the division and the number 1 seed by winning their final 2. I'm also not done. If Denver, New England, and Jacksonville lose, and the LA Chargers lose, and I do want to make sure I correct myself from earlier in the show, because when I was going over what the Bills need in order for them to get the number 1 seed, I said that they needed the Chargers to win 2 games. That's not the case. What they need is the Chargers to lose one of their games. So again, for the Chargers, who still have a chance for the number 1 seed, they need Denver, New England, and Jacksonville to lose. They win their final 2. The Chargers are AFC West champs and AFC number 1 seed heading to the playoffs. Buffalo's only chance to get the number 1 seed: Denver loses, New England loses, Jacksonville loses, and the Chargers lose. If that happens, if Buffalo wins their last 2, the Buffalo Bills will be the number 1 seed in the AFC. In the NFC, it's a lot clearer. Only 1 spot remains because Detroit lost earlier today, so the Packers are in. So that leaves 1 spot for the NFC South: Tampa Bay, Carolina. And I think we pretty much know the story by now, but just a quick refresher. Tampa Bay wins. If they beat the Miami Dolphins, it does not matter what Carolina does in their game against Seattle. If Tampa Bay takes care of business against the Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay, Carolina, next week, winner wins the NFC South. Now, if Carolina beats and upsets Seattle this week, they can clinch if Tampa Bay loses to Miami. As far as the number 1 seed, that is the Seattle Seahawks if they win their final 2 games. If Seattle loses one of those games, let's say they lose this week to Carolina, then the San Francisco-Chicago winner will get the number 1 seed if they win their final game next week. The Rams also have a shot. They need Seattle to lose to Carolina. They win their final 2 games. And then the San Francisco-Chicago winner needs to lose next week. And then the Rams get the number 1 seed. So, hey, I could have just said that in the beginning and been done with this in, a minute? But we had fun. I hope you guys did too. It's a Christmas special here on Proline TV, part of the Our Lads Football Network. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern for the Playbook ATS podcast. Mark Lawrence will host. We'll have Andy Isco. I will be there. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that Jim Feist can make it. But again, with family in town, if he is unable to make it, Jim will definitely be back again next week. Keeping in mind that you can still check out Jim Feist on the Jim Feist Handicapping Show from Tuesday at Dom DeMarco's. That's already in the library here at Proline TV. And that's what Jim's doing again next week. So if you miss Jim tomorrow, Jim will return next Tuesday at Dom DeMarco's once again, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here on Proline TV. Matter of fact, we're probably going to do it all over again next week. That's what we're aiming for with the Playbook ATS podcast, once again moving to Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern. We'll tell you more about that maybe tomorrow as well as early next week. And as far as my videos, well, for college football, as far as the bowls, it's over, but I will be putting out a playoff preview video more than likely on Monday. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share all that stuff, especially to subscribe so you don't miss any of our shows, especially since you just never know when they're going to pop up live right here on Proline TV and the Our Lads Football YouTube channel. So look forward to that. Again, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Really appreciate you sticking in with us here. And I hope I was able to inform you as best as possible on the NFL playoff picture. If you have any questions, comments, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Anything at all. Let us know what's on your mind. And that's what we're doing this for. As you can see with the 1 minute deal I did there at the end, I had this information. I could have kept it to myself, but that wouldn't be any fun. So that's what I mean by we do it for you. And I hope it's appreciated. I know it is for the most part. We have a lot of really good, loyal listeners and viewers. And it's really awesome to be able to give back, especially at this time of year, the give back time of year. Thanksgiving, now Christmas. Next year it's New Year's, and it's off to 2026. And I can tell you, and I can promise you this, that 2026 is going to be the best year ever in the history of my career. With this relationship here at Proline TV getting bigger and better. Like I said, I'm going to start pushing out even more videos on my other channel at Prime Sports Network, the ones that don't fit here at Proline TV. We've got other really cool programming that we're working on behind the scenes. And it's not just football. Don't forget, in a couple of weeks, we're going to start talking college basketball. And once we start talking college basketball, it's wall to wall up until the Final Four ends our season. And that's not until April. So we got 4 months of college basketball starting real soon here at Proline TV. Horse racing as well. NASCAR picks it up with the Daytona 500 in February. And, of course, you got everything else like the NBA, the NHL, and lots more. Horse racing, that is something that is going to get a lot more busy here starting in late January. Once we start picking things up with horse racing, all of a sudden we're getting right into the Kentucky Derby prep races. And that's going to be a lot of fun following that road all the way to the Derby in the first Saturday in May. So again, Merry Christmas to everybody here at Proline TV, also the Our Lads Football Network. And we'll see everybody here again real soon, including tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern with the Playbook